Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you for coming tonight. This is our public informational session that we are having from the Littleton Common Sewer Feasibility Study Committee. We are waiting on 2 members, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. One thing I'd like to start by what is on our screen right now is the Littleton Common Sewer Feasibility Study formed a definition of what it would consider a wastewater treatment center, what would be feasible. So a wastewater collection and treatment system that is affordable and paid for by the users of the system only. So I just want to make sure that we have that in our minds while we're talking about our presentation tonight.
Could you mention when that definition was created?
I would have to go back and look to the minutes to find out exactly the date that it was created. But we definitely at some point sat down and talked about what would be considered a feasible system. So it was talked about, and I can look that up in the minutes.
Great, thank you.
The members of our committee, myself, Megan Ford, I am a citizen at large. I'm not a politician. I am a resident in town. I own a home on Shattuck Street, and I have 2 children. My son graduated from high school 2 years ago. He's in his 2nd year of college, and my daughter is in 5th grade. She actually is here tonight, which is great. And my parents, I'm an only child. My parents moved here from Pennsylvania to now live in Littleton. I am also the chair of this committee as of January of this year. Steve Yonley is the vice chair. He's a citizen at large. Peter Casaneri represents the Board of Health on our committee. Richard Crowley represents the Planning Board on our committee. Steve Moore represents the Permanent Municipal Building Committee, replacing Joe Calentro, who served on this committee for a long time, and I'd like to thank him for that. Ted Doucette represents the Board of Selectmen. Janet Levine is here, and she is a citizen at large. Dina Flockhart is hopefully on her way. She's a citizen at large. Warren Terrell is a citizen at large. And I just want to mention that I wanted to thank Ken Smith for his time on this committee. He spent a long time on this committee and resigned in the spring. And Savas Danos serves as an advisor to our committee, at least he has. So this is the part that Dina was going to talk about. I do want to let her take this part because I think it will be important. I think she's on her way right now. We could open it up to some questions right off the bat at this point. I think we're going to have a large discussion after our presentation, but if anybody has any burning questions right off the bat, I will not necessarily answer them right now, but I could write them down and save them for our discussion a little bit later. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Well, many of you may have heard that our committee voted last night to request that the Board of Selectmen put an article on the November 4th special town meeting warrant to vote on whether or not to proceed with a design of the concept that we have found as a committee. We have a concept for a system that could be feasible, but we won't know the answers to the questions until we move further with starting to design that system. So we were requesting that the selectmen put an article whether or not to vote to move forward with the design of our concept that we have. Last night, the Board of Selectmen they chose not to insert it into the November 4th town warrant. Although this is very disappointing to me, and our committee, as we all voted unanimously to do this, I think the silver lining is that we now have time to spend more time with the property owners who would be potential users of this system, and that would definitely allow us time to get some form of commitment from them, find out what the stakeholders' interest is in this. Essentially, we are doing this for them. It is something that I think we would have had limited time. We do have a property owner forum scheduled for October 5th to meet with the property owners and to tell them about what we've learned and to hear from them. This will allow for more time than just a few weeks before an election. So that is the silver lining that is behind the fact that it has either been postponed till May. So Any comments or questions about that? Oh. Yes, Mark.
Did the selectmen give you any indication as to why they pushed it forward?
I watched it myself on TV. I requested a reason, and I was not given one this morning or today. When Ted arrives, we can hear directly from him as a member of the selectmen. From what I gathered from watching it on TV last night, it looked like they were looking for a way to find the funding and a way to fund it. That's what I kept hearing, so. But I think when Mr. Doucette shows up, we can ask him directly. Yes.
On October 5th, when you have the meeting with the property owners,
Yeah.
are you going to ask them for contributions at that time?
I don't think it's our committee's charge to do any of that. I think our committee's charge is to inform them what we know to date with the study that we've been looking at. If anyone's going to ask for commitment, I think it needs to be a direction from the Board of Selectmen to the town staff and town administration. And then I think either getting letters of commitment or asking for contribution would have to come from the town, not from this committee. It's not this committee's charge. We've fulfilled our charge. Our charge was to find out whether or not it would be feasible to put a municipal sewer in the common area, and we have a study, we have a report that we believe could potentially be a feasible system. And so the next step is to start designing that to answer questions and to get the answers to all the questions. But yes.
Yes. Was the charge, did it specify municipal sewer?
You know, I don't know
Or
if
did it
it's,
say sewer? Or
Yeah.
some sewer. I think it was to find
we can look up the
some
exact wording.
solution in some, I can look it up right now.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll do that and get back to you.
yeah, that would be great.
I mean, I do believe it was to find something in general. It wasn't to specify specifically a municipal sewer.
Mhm. Wastewater treatment facility in the common area.
That's probably good language. Or anything could be open from that,
Right.
you know, language.
I believe, and I'm not an expert in this area at all, my background is in audiology. I have no background as a citizen. I came onto this committee concerned about the economics, and I actually voted against forming this committee. And when I went to the selectmen back in 2010, they asked me to join this committee. So I did join it to make sure an economic study was done and a market study was done as part of our study. But with my limited background, I do believe that I have heard that there is some limitation of putting a private sewer in the common area, but there might be some people here that know the answer to that for sure. So,
Thank you.
any other questions?
The voters of the town know that if this passes, it automatically triggers the 9.3 million for the first phase,
What's 9.3 million?
the first phase of the build-out.
I don't know that number. There's, for the construction of our sewer, I believe it's 4.2 million, and there's an energy component that may or may not be, these are estimates of 3.2 million, I believe it is.
Okay, I don't have those numbers. Yeah, mine was 7.5 million.
Which if
It
you
waves
add
back and
those-
forth between 7.3 and
Yeah.
7.5.
Those are all moving parts that our conceptual study can only give an early estimate. And so the preliminary design will give the answers of more exactly how much it would cost and whether or not an energy component will be used in the system. So I think without the energy component, it was 4.2 million, and I think, or 4.5 million, and with the energy component, you would add an extra 3.2 million on.
Let me interject something here. I'm Warren Terrell, one of the members of the committee. The action before the town meeting, whenever it is brought forth, is to prepare a preliminary design report. This is one step in a series, getting to a point where the state would then allow you to proceed into construction. It's the very first step. There are very special criteria as to how a municipality does a preliminary design report. And it's basically looking at all the options, screening those options, and selecting one or two options for more detailed study. It is not the final design. But the product of the preliminary design study is a recommendation of the system that is environmentally sound, cost-effective, to be built on the site, meaning the service area. And that procedure is followed, whether it's Littleton or Boston or Springfield or Mashpee down the Cape. In that preliminary design report, the costs are estimated, capital costs, operational costs, staffing costs, monitoring costs, that kind of thing, so that you have a proper basis for economically comparing the alternatives. You have a basis for comparing them environmentally, and then you have a method for comparing them in terms of scheduling. What evolves from the preliminary design report is the recommended alternative for, in this case, the Littleton Common area. That then becomes the next step of design it, the third step, permit it, fourth step, construct it, fifth step, initiate operation and operate.
Could I interject a question?
Yeah.
In there? My main concern in 3 years or 4 years that I've been following this issue is at some point the town could appropriate a sum of money for some activity. And that activity will result in the creation of a municipal sewer department.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that language for that activity is really elusive. I am a determined guy, and I gotta tell you, that a language to find it, show me an example. I can't. I just don't know what it is. And I actually asked members of this committee 3 days ago that question, and they didn't have an answer either.
Mm-hmm.
There is a language, something we could vote for, which would all of a sudden the town bought the farm, so to speak. We now going to have a municipal sewer department. And lots of towns, when they do this, the smart towns, go ahead and create bylaws to manage a municipal sewer department. Towns create bylaws, if they're smart, ahead of windmills and have various other things, okay, where they want to know they've got some rights. Because if a town does not create bylaws to manage these creations, then the town's out of the picture. And we would not be having this meeting if we had a municipal sewer department. The rates, the betterments, who's gonna get sewered, this is all out of our purview now. We've lost it. It's been given to a sewer commission, like a water commission.
Yeah, maybe, Mr. Terrell, can you speak about the timeline of when that would happen? Because right now, we're pretty far from that point of it.
Yes, I can. One of the requirements to actually start construction is that you, as a owner of a system, and it doesn't matter whether you're an owner as a public entity or a private entity, the owner has to have established the management plan of how they're going to manage and operate that which is going to be built. And that has to be, there's a series of steps of how that is done, but it has to be in place and completed and approved before you have permission to complete your project and start it up. So in parallel with the construction and the permitting of the project is a administrative track that has to go on, so that when you get down to the point of starting the system, the administration is in place. And that's the same as to whether it's a private or a public entity. Yes?
In this particular case, is something that triggers the state, then the state takes over, or is it all local? In other words, do we have a sewer director, or, you know, a department, if you will, with trucks and machines and, you know, benefits and all those types of things? When does that happen?
The owner has to demonstrate that they have established a management system for the works, for the sewerage, okay? It could be a sewer department, it could be a privately run system under contract to the municipality. That's done. But you have to have the structure in order to get permission to run your system.
And just to clarify, you're speaking and you're not of this committee, because this committee has no idea. We don't
And
have
we
any
haven't
idea.
studied that.
Yeah, we haven't studied
Yeah.
that at all.
Yeah.
But Mr. Terrell has experience with conventional sewer systems. The system we're looking at is not a conventional sewer system. I don't know if it would apply the same rules, but just please take that into consideration.
But that will happen at some point.
It will. It must. And the reason it must, is that in many cases, particularly private, in many cases, particularly in the public sector approach, they are looking to obtain some kind of low-interest loans, or possibly even a grant, and that becomes a condition of receiving those monies. Because all these systems operate under a permit system, which is regulated by the DEP. So, in a way, the owner of the sewerage system becomes a customer and has to demonstrate compliance to make these things, to be able to own and operate.
Is it, at some point, does the state dictate to you folks how this is run, if you will? In other words, I guess my real question is it out of our hands, the town of Littleton? Is it out of their hands at some point?
I think this is all something that our committee really could only speculate at this point.
Actually, Megan,
Yep.
I did a whole lot of research on that.
Okay, I'm going to introduce Dina Flockhart. She is who we're waiting on to present. I'm sorry, Dina.
Very sorry.
That's okay. We got started with the introduction and I stopped at your point. We're not going to stand at the podium. We're just going to sit at the table and I'll work the slideshow. So if you wanted to maybe talk about an answer for Mr. Coughlin and then go right into your presentation, we can.
I'm sorry, my terminology changed yesterday in the United States.
That's okay.
I actually did a fair bit of research. I went through as much of the Massachusetts general laws as I could, with help from a search engine, because it's huge. And I had sent Megan a couple bits of the research that I did. The decision to create a sewer commission is actually in the hands of the town. There is a regulation saying how it can get created, how many members it can have, and what its duties are if it gets created. But it's all town-based, as far as I could tell. I'm not saying this is exhausted, but I could not find any place in the Massachusetts general laws that said that a sewer commission had to be created, or that anyone but the town had control over it, other than adhering to Title
One
V
thing
and
that's
other laws.
interesting, just before you came in, and, you know, we've been asking the committee this question, and Megan has offered, and I believe her, that this committee has not been working with that aspect of the issue, and I accept that, and that explains why we don't have an answer. Certainly, as a guy who's got a vote, my one single little vote, plus all those people I can influence, that one little single vote to say, am I in favor of this or not? Am I going to spend $7 million for this, for example? I think we need an answer to that question, and it's not really your fault that you don't have it, but I do think that a committee that's doing this,
So there would be a debt
Should need the
exclusion
answer,
override
you know,
because
you've
you
gotta
wouldn't
come
be
up with it.
spending $7 million. The users of the system would be spending that. So you will not be spending that. There is a debt exclusion override when it gets to that point.
I'm gonna sign on a dotted line, so when they can't pay it, I'm stuck
No,
with the
not
debt.
at all. It won't get to that point ever, because if it
Really?
gets to the preliminary design, which you could be responsible for, and Ted Doucette will be talking about the exact numbers of what it could be, and if it gets to that point and it says, no, this system will not work, the town will be responsible for paying back that debt only. It will not go to full construction. If it goes to construction, it will be paid for by the users of the system. It will not be coming from the taxpayers or the town.
While researching those laws, I did come across an example of a similar system where it's a limited district, paid for by the users. It's in Hingham. And it is paid for by the users and not by the town.
Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and move forward with our presentation at this
Please,
point.
absolutely.
Okay, we'll have more discussion after. Thank you for being patient.
I want to apologize. We had to move a meeting to 7:30 and my electronic calendar moved all the meetings to 7:30, so I apologize for keeping you waiting. So we've got a slide up at right angles. The question is, a lot of people want to know, why are we looking at sewering at all? You know, do we really need it? And the answer is we have water quality issues, we have elevated nitrates, we have water quantity issues. At the last town meeting, Savos had to ask for money to refurbish a well because it wasn't producing enough. We're facing reduced town services because we're having a little bit of a tax crunch. The class sizes in the schools are getting bigger relative to the number of teachers. We're looking at, maybe being short of police or fire. Right now we have some grants that are helping with that, but a few years down the line we might have problems. We're seeing decreased vitality in our town center. Right now there's a lot of for rent signs, for lease signs. And while it's lovely to have some secondhand shops in town, and I shop at them, they're not a sign of a healthy economy. We're under increased pressure for sprawl. We have 40B projects coming in, and while we have a master plan, we don't have the tools to do a huge amount of control, and the sewer could give us some of those tools. Going back to that, the need for the controlled economic growth. We need to increase our tax base somewhat. We don't want to become Westford. We don't want to become Leominster. We like the character of our town, so we want to make that controlled. We want to keep industry where industry already is, keep farmland where farmland is. We preserve the open space in the farming. It's very important to us. We did some looking a few years ago with the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, and that was definitely one of the things that seemed to be uppermost of concern to citizens, was keeping the character of the town, not turning into the typical bedroom community, not turning into Framingham or Natick. And right now, if you're a property owner in the common area and your septic system fails, because of the current density, there's not a whole lot of options. There's not a lot of open space to relocate a new septic system. A really good example is the sub shop. Sub shop, if their septic system fails, there's nowhere to go. They have this tiny little parking lot, and that's it. Same with the subway. They have the same problem. And one of the things that people have said is, why do I have to leave town to go get food if I want to eat out? One of the things that's keeping us from having restaurants, that sort of business, and there are people in town who want to open them, is because the septic systems can't handle it.
I just want to add that on our website, I read a comment today, our website, villagecommonsewer.com. I read a comment today from a dentist in town who would like to relocate his business to the common and was told he can't because of the sewer, the lack of sewer. So there are businesses that want to come to the town common that can't. That's a fact. So, okay.
And actually, I rent in the mill in the center of town, and my landlord almost didn't rent to me because I wanted to put in a washing machine and run 1 or 2 loads of wash a week. He wasn't sure his septic system could handle that.
So restaurants, medical facilities, people with washing machines can't come to the common area. Those are businesses that are not allowed at this point. So,
And yeah, how did we get to this point? What have we been looking at? Back in 2002, the Master Plan Committee made some recommendations. Again, keeping sprawl down, keeping the economic growth where we already have industry. I was part of that plan committee. That's part of the reason why I've come back to serve on this committee. It's because at the time, we didn't have the tools to make any of the stuff we wanted to happen. And this sewer could give us the control we really need. So after that, we had an Economic Development Committee reporting to the Board of Selectmen. Metropolitan Area Planning Council came in and helped us do some surveys and make recommendations about what the town really wanted. Board of Selectmen set some goals. There were more reports. We've got some overlay districts to control what things look like. We've got some new growth in town that's being built to those visual standards. We've got the sign bylaw. Some things went in to try and keep our town looking the way we want. We don't want neon signs. We don't want plastic. And so then the town approved the formation of this committee to investigate sewer, to see whether it was something that was possible. We don't have the geography for normal sewer. We don't have running water, because normally sewer, the solution to pollution is dilution. They treat it partly and then they let it go in the water. We can't do that. We have to be more environmentally responsible if we're going to put in sewer. And so this committee was formed to see if that was a good idea. And we've come back and we're saying that we think it is. So the next strategy would be to go to the town and ask them to approve the next step, which is finding the answers to some of these questions. We think it's feasible. Is it really feasible? Can we build within the economic limits we have?
Yeah, the confusion that's out there is a lot of the signs say vote no for sewer, but we're not asking for sewer because that would be a debt exclusion override, which means that if it goes to sewer, it would be paid for by the users of the system. That's the concept we've been looking at, which could be feasible. Could be affordable and paid for by the users of the system, the property owners that use the system in the common area, not the homeowners in the rest of the town that are not hooking up to this. What we will hopefully be asking voters to vote on in the future is to approve the beginning of designing the concept that we've been looking at. That's it. So it's a little bit different than a debt exclusion request. Okay, so I'll let you keep going.
So we're talking about, these words have been thrown back and forth called smart sewering. And we're looking at it because it's not the typical system. It doesn't make huge infrastructure. It can be built in steps. And part of what we're looking to do is restore the water balance. Can we go to the next slide? That's the town of Littleton. And the red area is the area west and north of 495. That's actually where I live. And that's where the water gets pumped. There's some spots right in there, and those are the wells. And right now, the water gets pumped out of there, and it doesn't go to my house. I don't have town water. It gets pumped over 495, and it gets fed to the common area. There are some areas on this side, but it gets fed to the common area and gets fed further down 119, and it goes through the house, into the septic systems, and flows away from the town. The geology is such that the water goes toward Nagog, toward Concord. It doesn't recharge our wells. And we're starting to have problems with water quality and water quantity, the amount of water we can draw out because of that. We haven't had any serious droughts in a while. I think the last one was 93. But we might be due. And we're going to start seeing some real problems because we're not putting that water back where we took it from. Go back one. So restoring that water balance is really, really important. We're also talking about waste. Right now, we're taking that water and throwing it away instead of putting it back. We're taking the organic solids, and they're not going back into the land. There's things we can do to make the process more efficient. There might even be things we can do to make the process generate energy and pay for itself. That's a big if, but it's something to consider. The smart sewering also doesn't build this huge infrastructure. It uses the stuff that's already there. It uses treatment that's at Digital, which is now IBM. Sorry, now you know how long I've been here. The Point, which is the new development. It would also not bypass the existing septic systems for the houses. It would use them as part of the system. It would require as little extra building as we could possibly do. And again, we talked about phased. You just build what people need with a little extra, and then when enough people want to sign on, then you build the next bit. You don't build this huge thing and then try to pay for it. And again, if we can make it pay for itself, if we can make it pay a little more, possibly through a little energy generation, possibly through other ways, then we can start talking about the transfer of development rights. And that's a really important idea. That's that tool I was talking about that will help fund the goals, help make the goals in the master plan possible. Preserving open space while directing development into the areas where it's already happened. We have unused industrial buildings in town that you can't put businesses in there because the septic can't handle it. If we had a place to put that sewage, we could put businesses in there, and we wouldn't have to worry about them contaminating the water because they're close to our wells. It would be going to treatment.
Cleaning up the groundwater, from what I understand.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So before we move on, I wanted everyone to do a little quick bio introduction. So if you could just tell people your background. I apologize for the backwards order of this, but
And yeah, I don't have I'm so new to the committee, I don't have a bio on the website yet. My name is Dina Flockhart. I've lived in town since 1989. I served in the Master Plan Committee. At the time I was doing that, I had just ceased being a contractor to EPA, where I worked on wastewater, the National Permit Discharge Elimination System, and other environmental concerns. I've got a master's degree in regional planning and an undergraduate degree in environmental science.
and your thesis was in the area.
My thesis was on siting septic systems. I actually helped work on Title V.
So as a citizen at large, you're quite valuable with your information background.
I'm trying.
Okay, and we're going to move on actually to Mr. Terrell. You also bring a great deal of expertise to our committee. If you could just give a brief background about yourself, and then you can go ahead and talk about, Mr. Terrell's going to
Yes,
talk
thank
about
you.
conventional systems. Yeah.
I'm Warren Terrell, live in Littleton on Mill Lane, been here since 1966. My professional background is I'm a registered civil engineer. My specialty is sewerage, collection, treatment, discharge. I guess over my career I did about 25 of these systems. Served on several committees in town over the years. Most recently this committee, but the Permanent Municipal Building Committee. And I think I was there, well, the library. Each of those stints were about 10, 12 years. This is truly a unique situation for Littleton. Most frequently, the drive for sewerage comes as a result of some kind of direct overriding need of pollution, failing septic systems, water pollution, that kind of thing. That's not the case in Littleton. We certainly have limits on how large leaching systems can be, particularly in the town center area, but we do not have the sewage running down the streets. Not a pleasant thing, I might add. So part of my aspect has been to try to work with the committee and counsel them as to some of the things that have been done in the past, rightly and wrongly. And I've been on the committee for a couple of years now. So what I'm going to try to do is explain a little bit about conventional sewerage versus smart sewerage. And this graph here, illustration, tends to show that how it used to be done under the label typical, and how it's proposed to be done recently under the acronym of smart sewering. Previously, and I'm talking back 60s, 70s, and 80s here, the financial situation was that the state and feds would give you between 75 and 90% of the capital cost in exchange for you building a system that served generally large areas, in exchange also for you owning and operating the system over its lifetime. So when you had only had to kick in, say, 15%, the drive was to put in larger systems. One of the downsides of that was that because you expanded and served lots of areas, you did not put the treated waste back into the groundwater in the same area from whence it originated. Because very often you were going to a central treatment plant, treating it to a very high degree, and then discharging it into a river. This had the adverse effect of tending to reduce groundwater levels in an area. Discharging into a stream was done under a permit system, and the treatment over the years has become much more rigorous under this permit system. The economic feasibility of a typical system relied on the fact that you've built this large system, and maybe you've only got this much users connected to it, but you've got a big piece of unused capacity that you had to pay for, and it turned a profit if you were able to encourage the growth and have new connections coming in so that more and more people and industries use these systems. And obviously it was a very large capital investment. Generally, there was not much talk of generating energy from these systems except in the largest of the treatment plants. Greater Lawrence Sanitary District, Deer Island Treatment Plant, Fitchburg, the larger municipalities, there was enough economy of scale there to reclaim some of this energy through biogas and generate power or burn it for heating purposes. Smart sewering, on the other hand, takes a much more measured approach, a much more closely focused approach to how big you make the facilities, how frequently you run the capacity much more closer to the actual demand. The downside of that is you may be faced after 5 or 10 years to upgrading your treatment plant to make it bigger because the demand has accumulated. If the demand does not accumulate, then there's obviously no need to go to that next phase of construction. The smart sewering, by virtue of the treatment processes used, will tend to maximize the use of renewable energy. This is one that I personally have a little bit of real concern about, because I'm not sure that at the size of the treatment facilities we're talking about here in Littleton, that the economy of scale is there for renewable energy. However, that's exactly what the type of question will be answered in the preliminary design report. Because our proposed system has you could call it a treatment component, and it has a energy recovery component. And it's that energy recovery component that I personally am looking forward to seeing what the preliminary design report, how they evaluate that. The phased construction approach does reduce the economic risk to the town because you are closely matching the treatment capacity with the demands being placed upon it. And in fact, the concept of the very large treatment plants, the very over-designed, over-capacity treatment plants, over the last 10 to 15 years has pretty much gone away. And even larger facilities are leaning more towards putting a capacity much more in line with the demand. The downside of that is all of a sudden in comes a large industry, say for example, that wants to locate in the municipality. And you look at it and say, well, come on in, but we really don't have this capacity. We're going to have to do an expansion. That is a good risk to have because you're planning before the fact rather than letting them say, come on in, hook up, and then you get into problems because you're now overloaded. So the smart approach of using a phased approach whereby you just kind of lead a little bit ahead of the demand, of the capacity, so the capacity is always there, but it's being fully utilized, is a sound approach and one which is being emulated in the industry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to actually skip ahead my slides. I'm going to take over and talk a little bit more about smart sewers. And I think that you led nicely into this slide. So if you want to take a look at this slide, the red line represents a conventional system. One of the things that taught me a lot when I first joined this committee, we actually took a field trip to the Acton wastewater treatment facility and toured that facility. And it was a very large facility that was built at full build out, expecting that 20 years from now, X amount of people are going to want to join this, hook up to this sewer system. But however, currently it was a fairly new, relatively new system, and there was only a small percentage of people hooked up to it. So most of that facility was waiting to be used. It was not being used. That requires a very large capital risk, and that's what your conventional system is looking to do. They build this big system hoping to grow the economy, hoping to bring businesses, bring people to hook up to this system. What we're looking at is not that system. We have a bunch of buildings in the common area that exist right now. A lot of them are vacant. A lot of them are not being used to their full capacity with the mixed-use zoning laws that we have. What exists right now, we would propose a system that would be built phase one for what exists right now, what the needs are right now, which represents the smaller blue line with lower cost. And then, like Warren said, if there was a need, we could do a phase two and expand it. There may never be a need for expanding this. Therefore, we only have the smaller sewer system that we need at this moment. That will reduce the capital risk. We're not building a system that is inviting sprawl. It's not inviting tons of property owners and people to build down Great Road with strip malls. We don't want that. Let me see. I think what I'll do is go into this slide, which a conventional treatment process has a lot of elements that go into the system, but also go out of the system and are lost. So we have water going in, and like Dina said, it goes to a different watershed. It's not replenishing the watershed where it came from. Nutrients are going in, getting lost. You have costs going in that you never see again. Where a smart sewer system proposes that you are bringing all of those elements back, regenerating the system where it came from, including possibly some income that could potentially be derived from the energy component that is part of the study that we looked at. It's not a necessary part of the study. It may not happen, but there's an energy component that would allow for septage and food waste to be captured. The methane gas that's produced from that would be captured and used as energy. Right now, there is an anaerobic digester in Littleton that's been there for a long time, very fine. They burn off a lot of septage, and it's going out into the environment. That methane gas is out in the environment. This would be a system that would not burn it off. It would actually capture the methane and use that methane as energy. And that could potentially pay for itself, pay for the system itself, and maybe even part of the sewer system. But those are all things that a preliminary design would answer. These are questions we have. Could this really work? It would only be answered if we start to design something like this. So the idea behind smart sewering and asking the question, is it right for Littleton? Smart sewers will control growth. It's going to reduce the pressure to sprawl out and have strip malls all the way up and down 119 Great Road. We don't want Westford. We don't want Acton. We want to see the green. We want to see the farmlands. We're trying to control growth in a very limited district, the common area, where it belongs. It has an environmental benefit. It's going to replenish our waters. It's going to clean the groundwater up. It's going to put the good nutrients back into the system. It certainly has an economic benefit, not only that this is a system that could potentially be affordable and paid for by the users of the system, but it will promote all sorts of businesses to come to town. We have zoning laws that allow for mixed use, and we could have a walking town village where you could go get your cup of coffee, you could go to a restaurant within walking distance, you could see your doctor if you wanted down the street. You could have all kinds of different shopping experiences of walking. It would promote community. It would promote the things that people of Littleton want. And you also have unique opportunities for local and state support with this type of system. We're talking about small sewer districts, something that would be built only if there is a demand for it. Right now, there certainly could be a demand. We could put a small sewer system in for the structures that already exist and fill those in. There's a lot of vacancies out there. Confetti and Lace just went out of business. The toy store just downsized. The office that used to be the apothecary, that Scott Brown's office, has been for rent for as long as I can remember. So when you're looking at a conventional system, there are some risks, but this is not a conventional system. If we were looking at a conventional system for the town common, I would have to say this committee would claim it to not be feasible, but this is a different kind of a system. It reduces the upfront capital needed to install this. It would be paid for by the users of the system. You would not, as a taxpayer, as a homeowner living away from the common area, would not be responsible for paying for this system. It would be paid for by betterments and user fees. Otherwise, I could not say that it would be feasible. I own a home. I cannot hook up to the sewer. I would not want to have to pay for it if I'm not using it. And we're not asking anyone to do that. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Janet Levine. Janet, would you like to tell everybody a little bit about your background?
Sure. I've lived in Littleton almost all my life. I've been a planning board member, former planning board member for 20 years. I've worked as a civil engineer for 20 years in the wastewater field, writing plans, designing systems, and working on the construction phase of them as well. And I am currently working as a teacher. So the part of tonight's presentation that I'm going to talk about is brief, and it's just to go over some of the more recent changes in the zoning. You can probably all recognize the new building we have going up downtown, right next to the Toyota dealership. It's a multi-use building. Part of it will be used by the Toyota dealership as their, I call it a spray booth to work on car repairs, body shop, whereas the front of the building will be used for a retail component. So there's a very good sharing of a number of different uses in one building. So this is something that under the new changes to the bylaw can be approved, and hopefully there'll be more of these type of buildings that will come into the common. As well as the second picture is a little bit harder to see, It was just a picture across the common looking at the existing buildings. Different roof lines, but really the same type of wood structure, so kept very consistent.
this?
Yeah, sorry,
Oh,
that's
sorry.
okay.
Sorry.
So the new building's keeping consistent with some of the older construction in town. And that was the whole idea behind making the changes to the zoning bylaw. It created the village common zoning and the village overlay, but it's to encourage economic development in the common area as buildings no longer are viable the way that they are being used today, that there's new businesses that may want to come in. They can be either revitalized or they can be taken down as this building was. This is the old Dr. John's building. And they can be built within the new construction guidelines, but they're still mimicking the aesthetics of the town. You're not seeing a new modern steel building coming in that doesn't fit, that just jumps out at you. You see a nice colonial-looking building that does blend with the rest of the construction in the area. And that's based on some of the design requirements that are in the new bylaw to make sure that everything is harmonious with the existing construction. Next, thank you. This slide kind of outlines some of the major changes that have happened with the new zoning bylaw and how they're working to make the common more pedestrian-friendly, to encourage economic development, to encourage new businesses to come in. There's landscaping requirements that encourage the new buildings to have either a porch if they can. They could possibly have some outside seating, the integration of sidewalks as new buildings come in. Maybe sidewalks can be built throughout the common to facilitate some walking areas. The vehicle and pedestrian features kind of go hand in hand with that. If a parking area can be found in the downtown area, that's something else that can be considered. But maybe as the new buildings come into town, the parking areas can be selected such that they do lead to a more pedestrian-friendly area. Service areas and equipment, just making sure that it's aesthetically pleasing, that the dumpsters are hidden, that the mechanical equipment is hidden, perhaps as a facade on the building, just that is there for purposes of covering some of the equipment that's rather unsightly to look at, but it's a necessity to have for the building. They do allow for mixed uses. There's a special provision for that allows housing to be on the upper level of the new buildings with the offices, perhaps a restaurant, small business on the bottom floor. The businesses should be facing the street, whereas the residences are facing the rear of the building or the side of the building. So it's still, as you drive by through town with the new bylaw, will have the business look on the front, but allows for that added residential portion because the residences and the businesses can share the parking requirements as well. If you live there, you're probably going to be there more so in the evening, and many businesses are open during the day but not in the evening, so the sharing of the parking allows for the two uses to be pretty harmonious. There's a design advisory team at the planning board, so determines that they want to have it review a particular plan if they feel it's outside of their area of expertise and they want to get a little bit more information on it. They can form a team of qualified people within the town to go through the plans and look and make sure it in fact does meet the bylaw, as well as is it in the best interest of the town? Is it, what's what I want to use? Does it meet the heating requirements, the electrical requirements? Is it energy efficient? And the last idea is there's, by special permit, if you're going to use mixed use, the planning board has a little bit more control rather than it being a by right. You have to go before them for a special permit, and they have a little more leeway as far as what they're going to require you to do, how you're going to do it. So it just gives the town a little bit more control. But the whole idea is with the new zoning bylaws, that you can have something a little bit different than what we have in the common right now.
All right, thank you very much. And we're going to move on to hear a little bit about some numbers from Mr. Doucette. But Mr. Doucette, do you want to give a little bit about your background?
Sure.
Everyone?
Did we vote to stay in our seats, or can we get up?
Well, the problem is that the mics are all right here, and so the podium doesn't have a mic.
Okay. All right. Yeah, my name is Ted Doucette, and I apologize to the committee and to those present for being late. I was on the soccer field, and I might be a little hoarse because I was out there yelling at some under-10s tonight. But I'm a relative blow-in. I've been here for about 10 years, and I've been serving on committees in town for almost 9 years. I started on the Board of Health, and my goal there was to make that a more user-friendly and more resident-friendly, and be able to get residents to have their septic system replaced for a reasonable price and without threatening the groundwater. So I was there for about 6 years, and then I moved to the Board of Selectmen, and I'll be finishing out my first term in May. Professionally, I am a registered civil engineer. I don't do a lot of wastewater work, but it's something that I did cover in school, and I do deal with to a degree. I've designed a couple hundred septic systems, so I'm familiar with those more so than the larger plants. But I understand the concepts and a lot of the science that goes behind these plants. The thing I want to focus on tonight is the financing of the next step, which is going to be the preliminary design report. And it was a very difficult night last night for me, and I'm sure for the rest of the committee, and we'll have to have a conversation. It was a very difficult vote last night where I had to vote for financial reasons to not have this put on the fall town meeting warrant. I think as a sewer committee member, I would have supported putting it on there, but as a selectman who has taken the financial policies and the financial health of the town as a priority, it just didn't fit with the plan. But so for the next phase, it's called the preliminary design report, and it's called that for industry standards so that people know what they're bidding on. But it is really the next phase of the feasibility. And we hear a lot of these questions about, well, are you going to solve this problem? Is this going to happen? Is it going to be financially viable? Are we going to be able to do food waste? If you want all those questions answered, we have to go to this next phase. And so for the this is talking a little bit about the smart sewer itself. So the first phase of the smart sewer, we're estimating from the preliminary feasibility study is going to be about 30,000 gallons a day, which will take care of the Wells property, which is the IBM property, and the Point, and I believe it does take some other properties into consideration. The total district consists of approximately 100 connections right now. Of those 100 connections or properties, there could be multiple uses on there, so you could take one building that is now maybe a small commercial shop, and you could turn that into a retail on the bottom, and then possibly offices maybe in the back, or apartments on the second floor, things like that. So even though it's only 100 connections, there could be many more actual contributors and users, businesses. So the capital cost based on the preliminary feasibility study that we have, you can see there is $4 million. And let's see. So if we can just skip that next part. I really want to get on to the next part here of the preliminary design report. As the smart sewer is proposed to be phased, the preliminary design report will also be phased. There is one important concept that we will be asking to be looked at first, and that will be for the geotechnical study to make sure that there is a place to put this water and area to treat it. So that'll be looked at first, and if they get through that phase and they would just say, look, there's just no place to do it, we haven't been able to find any place, the preliminary design report would be stopped at that point and it would not go on. If it does go on, we will be answering a lot of the questions and getting commitments from the owners. At this point, we've found 3 qualified design engineering firms, and they have been pre-qualified, so those will be the only ones that are allowed to bid on it. So as I said, there are the 2 key components for the phasing. There will be, as I said, the siting evaluation and the discussion and negotiations with the property owners. And the next slide. We're going to talk about the risks and benefits in just a minute. So, again, this PDR will be split into phases, and this is what we've said from the get-go. This committee has said that there will be stops and area checkpoints, and we're at one right now, and that's what we want to know. We're at a checkpoint. The preliminary feasibility study shows that, yes, this is possible. There are many situations that this is possible. There are many moving parts. We have to start narrowing down some of those moving parts. So we're at a checkpoint now. We feel that it's feasible enough to go forward. The feasibility exists enough to go forward with the next phase of the feasibility. So as I said before, the PDR will answer a lot of these questions. We have a lot of critics coming about with a lot of these questions, and if you really want a lot of those questions answered, we will get them answered in the preliminary design report. It'll narrow down a lot of those moving parts that I said. Is the food waste going to be possible? Is the biogas going to be possible? A lot of those moving parts will be narrowed down in this PDR. And we'll also be able to get the refined estimate of the betterment fees and what this is going to cost all the people that sign on, and of monthly fees. So it's really, like we've said before, taking it from this 30,000 view down to 1,000 feet to get a much closer look at it and to see if the sewer is feasible. So the risks to the town. What we would really like to see is, once this preliminary design report is completed, if the project goes forward, we will roll those in, and it'll all be ultimately paid for by the users. If it doesn't go forward, what happens? Okay, that's going to fall back on the town. That's our project, and that's what there's nothing to hide. That's what happens. So if we get through that first phase of the PDR and they realize that there's no place to put the water, then it's not economically feasible, then the town has to pick up the tab for that. If we say, okay, we found a place for the water, and then we get through phase 2 and they start looking at these moving parts and narrowing things down, treatment processes such as that, and it's still not economically feasible, then the town would be on the hook for that amount of money.
Can we go to this?
Yeah. So I think, again, I'm sorry for missing the part. All along that this committee has been saying that the definition of economically feasible is being able to be paid for by the owners. I mean, for the users of the system. That is, you can construct the system and you can operate the system, and it's all been able to be paid for by the users. The estimate that we have right now is the $558,000. That's going to be the article value when that comes up in May. And that will be coming up in May. We did get the selectmen, and I was part of that, to commit that this will be going for May. If we go through and do this for $558,000 and finds out that it's not feasible, we can finance that debt over the short term. If it's divided amongst the approximately 3,000 households over 5 years, the individual cost, each homeowner, based on the average house price, value of the house, assessment of the house, it comes down to about $200 per household, and it's about $40 per year, which you can see there is $3.33 a month. Am I using this to justify this? Am I using this in any way to say, look, it's not going to cost us anything, we need to go ahead and do it? No. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put that number of $558,000, which sounds like a lot of money, and people round up to $600,000, and people will say, well, it's even going to be more than that. I'm trying to put that into perspective of what that's going to cost us in our wallet. It is a big number, but if it's shared by everybody, if this doesn't go forward, it does come down to be something that's manageable. The financing options for that is it could be paid for inside the levy limit, and this is what will be happening in May. If it could also be done as an override. So if it's done as an override, this is what you would see as your tax bill would be increasing by this much. If it's done inside the levy limit, you can see this is how much of the levy limit, which would be from the capital plan, this would probably be paid inside the levy limit, this would be committed from the levy limit for those 5
Can I
years.
just interrupt, because I talked to Bonnie Holston about this, and my understanding was that we could ask for a delay in paying the principal back, and we would just pay the interest, and I think the maximum amount we could ask for is 5 years. And if it is found that the system can go to full construction, and we have that 5-year period where we don't really have to pay a lot back, then by that point, this could be rolled into the cost of the construction and the whole thing would be paid for, so we wouldn't have to even pay that. This is like the worst-case scenario, where it gets partway through the design says, it's not, you can't go to construction, therefore there's no users to pay for it. So this is the worst-case scenario. The best-case scenario is that in 5 years it goes to construction, and the people paying for that are not us, it's the users of the system. Do I understand that correctly? But that's my conversation with Bonnie just recently and last spring too. And before we get to questions, I just want to move a little bit more left. So
right.
this is how it's affordable. Do you want to talk about what makes it affordable?
Sure. A lot of the critics say, how possibly can 100 properties pay for this system? We only have 100 people. How are they going to pay for the, a $3 million or $6 million plant? Well, this is where it is. It's all proportional. The betterments and the user fees are all proportional to your use. So we have large users in town, in the area. One obviously being the IBM property, and one being the Point. So they would take up a proportional amount of that, those fees and those costs. There's another one. What's the other one in there? I can't see.
It's just a bigger version of this.
No, what's the other, the orange one? There's
88 additional
so
properties.
because you can see down around 4 or 5 o'clock there where there's some other large users that have been identified that stand out and take a greater portion, and then the remainder there up between 10 and 12 o'clock is the remainder that would be taken from the smaller users. So the majority would be taken up by those 12 users, and then the 88 users would pick up the rest. Okay.
Okay.
Does everyone follow that? Okay.
Okay. I'm going to hand it back over to Dina to just summarize everything. We're just about done with our presentation.
I have a couple more things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right now?
Yeah, I'd just like to go, as far as, we did this in April, and this is a very similar presentation, and I'm sure when we get to town meeting and we start doing some more presentations in the spring, that will look very similar. What the components that will happen is that we really have received feedback, and we're trying to listen to it. We're really addressing all those questions, and one of the biggest questions is why aren't the possible users, why aren't the 100 properties paying for this? And we heard that, and we tried to chase it down in the summer a little bit. It's not the best time to do things. We didn't have quorums with personal time and vacations, but we are going to get in touch with them, and now we're going to have the support of the selectmen to be able to go out and ask for money. We couldn't really go out and ask for money without the selectmen actually acknowledging that. And I've talked to Sam Park a couple of times, and I'm going to talk to Bob McDonald this week, who is at IBM, and hopefully talk to James Dean, who owns the property there, and see if we can get some contributions from them to get that $588,000 reduced a little bit. We're also holding the property owners meeting on October 5th, where we're going to brief them. It's going to be specifically, it'll probably be a very similar presentation, but it's going to be specifically talk about their concerns and to mention to them, if you want this, you need to advocate for it. You need to help. You need to get the information out there, because a lot of people are saying, where are the advocates for this? So we need to let the people know, and that's one thing that we need to ramp up. And at that point, we'll mention, look, please consider. We'll be coming to you formally and asking, can you make a contribution to this report? And it'd be nice to be able to get half of it paid for. Anything would be nice to get any type of contribution to return to reduce the risk for the town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to Dina.
These maps show the current land use in Littleton, and all the green is what's our forms of open space. And under the current zoning, without sewer, without some form of direction and control, this is what it might look like. And that's all medium density housing. It's a bedroom community. It's what we all don't want to see. If you want to go to the next one. So this is the summary. Why do we want this? Why do we want to find out more and see if we can really bring this project in? It supports smart growth objectives. It supports the master plan. It supports what the people in the town want. That we want to encourage economic activity where it already exists. We want to discourage economic activity on pristine farmland, on forests. We want to keep those in their current uses. Allowing greater density is smarter land use. letting things sprawl is not good land use. You put a parking lot on a, nice section of forest, it's never going to be the same. And with the district paying for the sewer infrastructure, the town may have to fund the study if the project doesn't go through. If the project does go through, it avoids cost to the town. We're looking at enhancing the property values in the center of town, encouraging revenue. Right now, with the empty buildings around, I'm really kind of worried about, teens hanging around the center of town. There's just too much for them to get into. I'd rather see those used. I'd rather see the property values go up. I'd rather have more to do in the center of town. I don't really want to leave town to do my shopping. I unfortunately drive a gas guzzler for business, and I don't want to drive. I want things here. I want to buy from my fellow citizens. I don't want to see their businesses go out. We were talking about businesses earlier that were going out of business. Noah's Ark, which is a secondhand shop, just recently downsized. And you know that the economy is having a little problem when the secondhand shops are getting smaller. So we're looking at also generating energy. That's a possibility. It may or may not help. We're looking at recharging the groundwater. Oh, this is a different slide than the one I have. It's okay. No. Yeah,
Okay.
just different. We're looking at recharging the groundwater with treated effluent. That was the slide we were looking at earlier. We were saying that currently the water is being pumped out. It's going away from us. It's not going back. It's not recharging Beaver Brook. One of the things that we kind of glossed over earlier was nitrate levels. Currently, septic systems don't treat nitrates. They pass through the septic system and into the groundwater. And they just, the levels hang around. The only solution to that is dilution by bringing more water in through rain or more water in through recharge. And why are nitrates a problem? They bind in the body and they interfere with the use of oxygen. It's not a big problem for adults, but it is a big problem for babies. Right now, most of the water isn't drawn from areas where it's a problem, but we were saying that if the water would be more concentrated because of a drought, it might start being a real problem. Let's see, potential energy use we just mentioned. And if we can get the property values up, if we can bring more controlled economic growth in, then we're looking at helping the property tax base. And we're looking at addressing those shortages we talked about in town services, in teachers, in police, in the fire department, in the highway department. It's the maxim is that a rising tide lifts all the ships. We're looking at trying to make sure that the tide comes in where we want it to. That we get that smart growth in the center of town, and we don't have to worry about somebody trying to buy the farmland on the edges and put something there. We're looking at a project with phased capital investment to reduce the risk. And something that the demand is contracted, it's not something we're building and they will come. The people who are going to use it are already there. But we're not going to know if the sewering project will work unless we fund this preliminary design study.
Thank you. I just want to add to, when we're talking about the economic and the foot traffic that you would like to see in the town common, there was a concern from one of the members of the organized oppositional group against this, who was concerned that business owners may not be able to afford their rent if this goes in and the landlords tie into a sewer and they have to raise their rent to pay for it. I can tell you that if there's a lot of vacancies in a building and there's only one or two businesses that have to pay the rent, the landlords are likely going to raise the rent if there's only one or two businesses when there could be 10 businesses in that building. I'd rather have businesses have their rent raised because of increased foot traffic and a more dense system where the business will be better than have rents be raised because nobody's walking around the town common. So it goes both ways. There's a risk. There will be change. I have a slide in here from Littleton from many years ago. This is the town common. It has changed. It's going to change. Change happens There's nothing you can do to stop it from changing. I've also talked to a lot of the members of the organized oppositional group who say there's two different camps. There's those that do not want to see change no matter what. There's also those that don't perceive a problem. And there's also those who would like to see a change, but are afraid that they don't trust the study that we have. They don't trust this committee's recommendation to move forward. They don't believe in the numbers. So you may be hearing about this, and you should definitely make your own decision. And I'm glad that you are all here tonight. Thank you so much for coming and being interested. I'd like to open the floor to questions. We do have a microphone. I would encourage you to use that if you can, because we are being recorded. And go ahead, Mr. Coughlin.
My name is Tom Coughlin. I live on Coughlin Road. And I have a question for Mr. Doucette. The slide that you put up there showing the 3,000 taxpayers in town, could you throw that slide back up?
This one?
I think, yeah, yes. And it was $200 per household. Now, is that if it goes to the taxpayers of the town? In other words, if we, the taxpayers, who live 4 miles outside of town, is that the number that you're talking about?
Yes, this is worst-case scenario.
Okay.
So this is, we get through the complete preliminary design report, and the conclusion is that it is not feasible. So the town has to pick up that $558,000, and that's how, if it comes out financed over 5 years.
Now, how is the town going to pick up the 558? Through a debt exclusion or capital funding, or how are they going to do that?
We don't know. That's what will have to be decided before May, and that's part of the reason that it had to get put off last night. Is there is a policy, but there's also changes to that policy that we've seen recently, that we do have this cap plan that is very successful, and if we can look forward and reserve space within that cap plan over the next 5 years, and that's the way the town wishes to proceed, then that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other problem I had when they threw the slide up of the Toyota building right next to the Toyota building, I think that is the biggest building I've ever seen in the town of Littleton. I just don't think that goes well with the common area, and I even though it's a colonial style, I just don't think it fits in. That's my opinion. And the other, just wanted to mention is, the folks on the committee own businesses in town. I know Mrs. Flockhart has a business in town, and there's some special interest groups in my mind that should be seriously looked at, because you're advocating for the sewer system, but you have a special interest to do that. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to comment, both Dina and I own businesses in the town common, and we legally disclosed those and brought that to the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
And it was a financial, it's a potential conflict of interest, because finances going in or out of our pockets could be an interest. So it's, I disclosed that the conflict of interest that I perceive could be the case is that if my landlord tied into sewer, my rent could go up because of that. Or also, I could make more money because there's more people in town. So there's money going in or out of the pocket, and I fully disclosed that. I brought it to the Board of Selectmen. I believe Dina did as well.
I know
And
you
that's-
disclosed it.
Yeah, that's open to
In
the
my
public.
mind, it's still a conflict of interest.
And that's fine. It's been disclosed.
Okay.
But it is also a conflict of interest. There's a positive and a negative. Our rent could go up, our income could go up. We don't know which is going to happen.
Can I just clarify neither one of them are property owners, though? I don't know if that was...
That's a big difference, because we are not the ones deciding to hook up to a sewer system. My landlord would be, Dina's landlord would be. So business owners and property owners are very much to be distinguished here. It's the property owners who would be the users of the system. As a business owner, I pay rent. I would be the reason why the property owner would need it. So it's actually business owners who can't come to town also have a conflict as well. There's one thing I wanted to just comment about. I meant to bring it with me, but I received a postcard in the mail today from the organized oppositional group. And I've seen some signs up in town. And when I look at these numbers, $3.33 per month, and I think about how much the people that are spending on the signs and the postcards, it probably would be about the same amount. But that's just my comment.
Would you like to share, I don't know if it's appropriate now, but I think it can tell part of the story, your experiences with your rents and your, renting your properties and the businesses and the restrictions that you can and can't do because of the current situation? I know
Well,
we've
yeah.
anecdotally shared them before. I didn't know if you
I
felt it
think
was appropriate to share now.
Before you came in, Dina mentioned about the washing machine
Okay.
incident.
right.
The incident that I had when I signed a lease, and I wanted to have a tenant fit up construction done for my business, and the town would not allow me, they would not grant me a permit to do construction until they had to do an analysis of what my septic usage would be. And as an audiologist, they considered me to be medical. Medical uses a ton more septic than a non-medical office worker. The building luckily was filled with either retail, which doesn't use a lot, or offices. I was lucky I was able to get in, but there was a good chance that I signed a lease on something that I didn't know that it was going to be a problem. I was on this committee. I found it quite ironic. I was on this committee. I joined this committee with no business plan, no intention to open a business. Things changed in my life while I was on the course of this committee over the last 3 years. I opened up this business unrelated to anything on this committee, and I just found it very ironic that I was almost not going to be able to rent, even though I signed a lease and have my business in town. But luckily, I was able to get in, but just by a few gallons. So.
And actually, for my business, there's a limit on the amount of time we can spend in the building because we have our own bathroom.
Sorry, you have your
There's a
one?
limit on how long we can spend.
Right.
We can't spend more than a certain amount of time in the building because they don't want us to use the bathroom.
Did they tell you how many times you can flush?
They didn't do that. But, yeah.
Yeah, these are real
Sounds
concerns.
like they should reduce your rent.
Well, our rent is not terribly high. We
They
are
said
not.
they were gonna raise it because.
No, we said we don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, all right.
But, no, the space I'm renting is not a retail space, it's an industrial space.
And it's bigger than the one that they just built, right?
Which,
The one that Mr. Crystal said was the biggest building. We just saw.
yeah, the mill is a rather large building. Can you pull that slide back up? The one of the...
The overhead?
Yeah,
Area.
the one, the
old
historic one, yeah. Do you see that building?
Mhm.
That's all one building. That's all the mill. I actually occupy the top, right here. There are now windows right in there. I occupy that top attic.
This whole thing is one big building.
Yep, it's all connected.
And that
So
was
I
the-
would say that's probably the biggest building in the common area. Although digital, IBM is also there, but it's much more shaded by landscaping. This one is actually there. It's amazing how many people don't actually see it.
Mr. Crystal, did you have a
Yes,
question?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First, I think I heard a comment about nitrates and septic systems that said they weren't treated in septic systems, and I don't believe you meant to say that. I mean, nitrates are broken down by bacteria in the oxygen-deprived environment of a septic tank.
Some-
Not as effectively as other systems, but septic systems do remove nitrates.
Ted, is this what you do for a living? Or?
Yeah. Well, I don't analyze it, but it's not, they don't break down 100%.
not 100%.
Nitrate loading is
No.
still an issue.
That's correct.
And it's funny, we had somebody who found our website from a small town in California that I actually lived in, because I was aware of this problem, that they had to switch the sewer because of nitrates from the septic systems. So,
Well-
you know,
Nitrates, I don't believe, are a problem in Littleton. Our population density is very low. Septic systems remove maybe like 50% of the nitrates, and the rest of them remain in the adjacent ground. That's why you've got perk tests and, an area where they go. So I don't know that we can, you didn't mean to say that.
meant to say that they don't completely remove them.
Okay, fine, thank
And
you.
that once they're in the groundwater, they don't break down.
Yeah, but they don't get to the groundwater, not if
Well,
they're in your
they-
septic
well,
system at home.
According to the water quality reports, they have.
I'd like to see some,
Contact Savas.
exactly.
Yeah.
But let me get on with my other two questions. You know, I've been in town for 50 years, coming up next year. Good town. I've watched the Common for 50 years. And I know that businesses are going away. They're also going away in Detroit. And I really don't believe that septic is going to save the Common as far as business is concerned, no more than it's going to save Detroit. The reason business is going, like I do go to Cornerstone Square. You know where the Cornerstone Square septic system is, by the way? It's in the building across the driveway, the main entrance. It's under that parking lot. It's a private septic system.
You know why?
Well, partly why, maybe if you think you know better, why don't you go ahead and say why?
Soil and groundwater. They have better soil, they have groundwater, and they have
Oh.
area. On the Common, those are three things that they don't have.
Well, also,
And you mentioned that, you don't know if it's going to work. Would you like to find out if it's going to work before you throw the baby out with the bathwater? Wouldn't you want to make a decision of whether or not to build a sewer once you have the most information possible?
well, we're talking about making this investment based on the fact that we can restore the Common business climate.
Not restored.
And the people are going elsewhere. They're going to go to the Point. They are going to Acton, and they're going 5 minutes. I can be down at Cornerstone Square. We now have a car dealer in Littleton Common, and that car dealer sort of sets the style of what's going to happen to businesses in the Common. That's my view of it. I don't know that it's going to be attractive as long as that Toyota dealer's there. So I don't really see a lot of excitement in the Common. So I'd be careful. I don't want to be a citizen that's responsible for sewer that can be paid for by that business climate. That's my major point. That's what scares me. And
Let me ask you this, if all of the 98 property owners came together and said, we will each pitch in enough, we'll put money towards a fund that will either pay for an improved septic system, or if the town goes to sewer, it'll go towards that. If that happens, and the town doesn't have to pay for the preliminary design, and the sewer system is paid for by the users of the system, but it's a town-owned sewer system, even though it's paid for by, how would you feel about it?
I'd like to see the sewer system be privately owned. I don't want the town investing in a sewer
Even if
system.
you didn't have to
We
pay for
don't
a
need,
risk
we don't
of
need
the
sewer
design.
here.
We don't need sewer? Why not?
Well, nobody's made a case. You guys got to tell me why we need sewer. Not because of the business at the Common. You got to give us a real reason why we need sewer. Because I don't buy the business thing doesn't ring any bells for me.
So let's talk about a couple of properties, the Scott Brown office, for lack of a better term. That is one of my favorite examples to use. Wouldn't it be nice to have a coffee shop in there? Wouldn't it be great to be able to go in there and sit there, have tables outside and have a coffee shop? Okay, that'll be nice, the rhetorical question. Why can't they do it? The lot's too small, they don't have the soil. Let's look at Littleton Cafe, okay? So let's say we don't want a coffee shop up there because Littleton Cafe. I was on the Board of Health when Littleton Cafe came in. They were in a similar situation as when Megan moved in. They did not have the sewer capacity, and they could not do everything that they wanted to do. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to go in there and get and smell muffins being baked? Wouldn't it be nice to go in there and get a fried egg sandwich? But they can't do it because they don't have the ability to, they don't have the water disposal ability to get rid of enough water so that they can wash dishes, so that they can actually bake in there. A couple other things, wouldn't you like to see the Littleton Pub? That, to me, seems pretty successful. Wouldn't we like to see that expanded a few more spaces? Sure, right? That's a great place to sit down and meet people and see people in town. But why isn't that bigger? Because they don't have the water. And why did they have to actually take seats out of the restaurant itself, the pizza place, in order to meet their sewer capacity?
Let me ask you, why is it that we don't have a private company coming in there and investing in sewer for that community? Why isn't there a private company like they have over in Westford doing this?
Because Westford it's a private property opening, it's a private sewer system for one property, maybe two across the street. I haven't seen the plans.
I think
But
Westford
it's-
does not have municipal sewer. It's all
Right,
private sewer.
right, it's all private, but everything's handled on the property. So, yeah, the owner of the mill could go and put a private sewer system in and increase their capacity, but they have no place to use it. But when you start talking about trying to get the mill to build, the mill, the Scott Brown office, the Little Peach, the Ken's Cafe, for all them to get together and build, you can't do that because you have to
I
have.
would be delighted,
orchestra.
Ted, to see the sewer committee work on a private solution. I would be delighted
Well-
to see you put your talents and your skills
We
into
fulfilled our
solving
charge.
the problem. You know,
Our
that to me,
charge
that would
was-
be a solution.
Well, we're working on it. We're working on not privately built. The other thing that you can't have it privately built is because the town's excellent bond rating allows us to borrow money at a lot less money than these owners. So if these owners got together and they were able to all agree and build something, they could not borrow the money for the same rate, and that might bump it out to be infeasible.
This
So-
committee is probably getting prejudged by, we see years of what's been going on in towns all around us. You know, this is how Tewksbury got started.
No, it's not.
They started small. They got the simple little thing, this is what we're going to do. And then all of a sudden, the rates were high, so they said, oh, let's get another 250 users. So they went, and of course, the public had nothing to say about that, because the sewer commission decided. So then they added more users, and they expanded. Then they did the whole town. Now, 2 years ago, they had people paying $5,000 a year to water their grass. I can point you to articles about the water rates and the sewer rates in Tewksbury. It's really scary. And, you know, over 20 years, it just grew and grew and grew. And now, the whole town's been sewered. The water races are going through the roof. You know, the governor, Eldridge, Senator Eldridge, is in charge of the water relief rate for people that have been attacked by their sewer systems. And this is not just at one or two towns.
is not what
This
we're
is what
planning.
happens.
We're not doing anything
Mr.
like
Crystal, you
Tewksbury.
bring up Tewksbury every time we meet, but we have actually cited Tewksbury, Chelmsford, Acton as the types of systems that are opposite of the type that we've been looking at and studying. So it's not the system that we're looking for. But do you have any other questions?
And may I suggest
No,
you,
I'm
and may I
good.
suggest
Thank
you
you.
look at Hingham?
Wait, what?
Well,
Hingham.
wait one
Oh.
second, because Mr. Levine, you had your hand up, and then Bob Zimmerman standing behind you.
Yeah, I did. Dina was talking about, and it came up about the nitrate problem
Uh-huh.
in Littleton. And Ted said, well, talk to Savas. Well, I did. As it turns out, at the well site, there is 0.75 parts per million. The state allowable amount is 10 parts per million. That's way below what the state even allows. That's number one. So we don't have a nitrate problem at the wells. We might have a nitrate problem in the common of 5 to 7. But Savas also tells me that that is basically from runoff primarily. And that is really not a sewer problem. That's a runoff problem. And where they measured that amount is in a little, I guess you call it a culvert or a holding pond or whatever, between the mobile station and digital. And that's where it settles. The reason why it's 5 to 7%, 5 to 7 parts per million, is because of the concentration that's in that one area. That's where all the runoff goes. And I also asked him, you have a private well, you said?
Me?
Yes. Did you have it tested for nitrates?
I had it tested for nitrates and about 30 other things that the state does not require.
And what was the nitrate level?
0.
Okay.
I am on the edge, but that was also, I have not had it tested recently. When I moved into town, I believe there were something like 6 houses on my road. There's a lot more now.
Well, what I'm getting at there is that according to Savas, there are no private wells in the 2 districts.
Okay.
So there is not a problem
All right,
in
we'll
those 2 districts.
All right, we'll concede the nitrate. We'll concede the nitrate point. You want the nitrate point? That's fine. There's no nitrate problem, that's fine, we can concede that. How about, conceding that, but then, why don't you guys concede that,
You guys,
Tewksbury...
this is
Tewksbury...
not you guys.
Okay,
This is me.
all right, we'll concede that, but there's still many other issues there as far as nitrate. So, you want the nitrate? That's fine. You know, there's still many other factors that affect, that the sewer can solve.
I have another question for you.
Okay.
How come this sewer article has been postponed twice now? There is really no good reason for it to be postponed,
It was,
other than you don't have the money, and you don't want to take it to town meeting, because you don't think you're going to get the money at town meeting.
well, you can say your opinion, and that's fine, that's your opinion.
Well,
Now,
tell
no,
me
wait a minute,
what
you
you
asked me a question, I'm going to answer. That's your opinion, that, you think, it was stated last night, we think we're going to lose. In May, this committee realized that we weren't doing enough for public education, and we wanted to put it off, so that we could make sure that we got the public educated. It was put off by the selectmen last night, it was not put off by this committee. Last night, this committee voted unanimously, I don't know who was here, but the
I was
members,
at the meeting.
they were here, and they voted unanimously to request the selectmen put it forward. The selectmen, last night, as I said earlier, that I felt that the financial interest should be put ahead of this, and it wasn't the proper time to do it at a fall town meeting for whichever way we're going to go. So my selectman opinion of proper and smart financing, that's why I voted to not put it on the fall town meeting.
Mr. Zimmerman, do you want to respond?
Well, a couple of points. First of all, from a septic system, nitrates discharge at 65 milligrams per liter. The background in normal groundwater in the state of Massachusetts is 1 to 2 milligrams per liter, generally toward 1 milligram per liter. The common area is an area of concern for the State Department of Environmental Protection. Check with Margot Weber in the central office. They're very concerned by 5 to 7 milligrams per liter, beginning to pump that into those few people downtown who have local wells and are not on town water. Mark's absolutely correct.
No wells down there.
Mark is absolutely correct that the drinking water supply, public drinking water supply for the town of Littleton is not threatened by nitrates, but they're a long ways away from the common. Let's see. If you go to West Concord or Concord Center, to any number of small village centers, you'll find all kinds of local entrepreneurs, restaurants, cafes, law offices, insurance offices, doctors, lawyers, you get the deal. Bakeries, candlestick makers, butchers, and the like. None of those businesses can locate in Littleton Common. The bottom line here is that what's been identified is a truly economical way for this program to move forward and get paid for by the users. There are a couple of caveats, however. There is a huge difference between privately funded and publicly funded cost of money. The difference is about 7.7 percentile. The town of Littleton can get 2% money from the state revolving fund, and potentially under a new bond bill being introduced by Carolyn Dykma in the House, 0% financing for this kind of construction. This would be favored under the bill. Private money for this starts at about 9% and can be as much as 12%. Over a 20-year bond, the difference in cost is enormous and would threaten the viability of such a project. I'd point out a couple other things. The town of Littleton currently pays $16.97, if I remember correctly, per $1,000 of property value for property taxes. The town of Concord, Massachusetts, pays $14.03 for every $1,000 of property tax value. We pay about $3 more than the town of Concord for property value because we don't have any commercial base here to speak of. And I have to add that I'm very concerned about the trend in Littleton. All of the businesses that have been built since 1990 are sprawl businesses. Toyota dealership. You won't find those in Concord Center or in like village centers. The strip mall across the street. The Dunkin' Donuts run we have in Littleton, starting out on Bruce Street, and then to the Shell station, and then to the other Shell station, and then around the corner to the drive-through. So, you know, if you run out in that 5-mile run, you can always stop in and get a few more. We have a subway out the other way. We're going to begin defining what's happening in Littleton with the point. Now, hopefully that tends to be more toward something that's walking and something like a village center. But right now, there's no destination in downtown Littleton. We have strip mall development. We have a CVS. You go there, you get back in your car, you go home. There's no place to go downtown. And the empty buildings that we see downtown are going to multiply. If we don't give those property owners some options, the ability to build a restaurant or cafe on the first floor and have an insurance office and a law office and a couple of apartments upstairs, those people are going to abandon the common, and we're going to have a derelict-looking area. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've lived in Littleton for 22 years, and I have to tell you that in my opinion, the common gets a little more sad every year. It would be nice to be in a position where we could reverse that trend, where we could promote a thriving, vibrant, downtown, walking village center. We can't do that without a sewer system. And the town can't afford a conventional sewer system. I would be the first to tell you that there is no way that we would recommend that the town go out and build 250,000 gallons of capacity and expect to have that paid for by the users. This process is laid out, is entirely affordable. And it might be even cheap, particularly if the energy component starts to flip something like $85,000 a year to help reduce the debt service on the sewer component. Couple things about the sewer component. All of the piping would be built up front. This won't be a forever war where, you know, the next time we need to expand the system, we need to build new pipes. That $4.3 million to build the sewer system builds the pipes up front. The only thing that's limited is the treatment capacity. And the treatment capacity is limited to meet the needs plus some to allow for expansion downtown. If no further expansion occurs, no further treatment is built, and that's very affordable for the 100 properties in the downtown common area. However, if we start to see economic spike, then in modules, anaerobic digesters are added to allow for that expansion. All of this stuff can be done. All of it points us in a direction of spiking commercial property tax income and stabilizing residential property taxes. I don't know about you. I've lived in Littleton for 22 years. I built my house in 2001. Since 2001, my property taxes have escalated by a factor of 4, while the services rendered to my kids when they were in school and the like have declined. If that is not a cause for concern for everybody in Littleton, I don't know what is. Thank you.
Would you like to use the microphone?
I would just like to have, for the TV audience, I respectfully request that Mr. Zimmerman identify himself.
Oh, I'm sorry about that,
And
yes.
how he is connected
Yes.
to this committee.
Yes, very well, thank you.
My name is Bob Zimmerman. I'm the Executive Director of the Charles River Watershed Association. We got a grant from the Barr Foundation and took money from several unrestricted funds within the organization to do the Smart Sewer Plan, which was done in cooperation with the committee. As a matter of fact, the committee negotiated our work plan with us 3 years ago as to the kinds of things they wanted us to investigate. So we saved the town about $145,000.
And you also, did you mention?
Oh, yes, for a year, we were consultants to the committee for $35,000. That service ended in July.
And you did mention that you're a resident as
And
well.
your address?
83 Sanderson Road.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? That's my mom. That's going to be too high for you, Mom.
Yes, my name is Barb Sweetek, and I am indeed Megan's mom. I moved here about 4 years ago, and I'm a senior citizen, and I live in Pine Tree Park. You also have another senior citizen community right within the Littleton borders here. We are walkers in those communities, and I agree so much with what this board is trying to do here. We need some place to walk to. We need some place to get out of where we're living day after day after day and bring our friends with us and take a walk and sit in the sun. And just as that man said, have tea and coffee and, you know, everything that would be open in a lovely little community like this. There are no buses to get on and go downtown or something like that. This is where we live, and so it's a plea that I'm giving you tonight to accomplish, and I hope that you have success.
Thank you, Mother. Then we'll disclose that she's my mother. There's a conflict there. Okay, and Mr. Coughlin?
Actually, I'm trying to put my parents, yeah. I started that conversation.
Tom Coughlin, Coughlin Road. When Mr. Kirsto brought up the Tewksbury sewer system that they were trying to get in, they said the same thing, that it's not going to cost the taxpayers of this town anything. And that's documented. And all of a sudden, everybody in town pays now. So I guess I'm very skeptical of the preaching that goes on up there, that the residents of this town are going to pay nothing. I just don't believe it. We have to learn from the lessons of other towns, and I think we're not doing that, or at least this committee is not doing that. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to respectfully disagree. All right, Dean, you want to go first? Sorry.
As I said, I did some research on this because Mr. Christie brought up he thought that Massachusetts imposed sewer commissions, and that he thought that he was seeing places where there was sewer, where it went town-wide, where it was very expensive. And so I went and tried to research, and I haven't had a lot of time, this is my busy season, to find places where they put in limited sewer districts and kept them limited. And one of the examples that I found was Hingham. I haven't figured out whether Drake gets managed or not, but Hingham, where they have 2 limited districts that they put in because of a need. And as far as I can tell, I haven't been down there, they seem to have kept them limited, and they are paid for by the users. So while Tewksbury is an example of where we don't want to go, and I grew up next to another example of where we don't want to go, Deer Island. I grew up in Winthrop. We were saying that this process is going to have a lot of checks. We're coming back to the town. You know, does this, here's the first phase, does this work? Here's the second phase, does this work? This isn't the approval process for the entire system. This is the approval process right now for the preliminary design. It's going to come back to the town. The town can look at it more and say yes or no. But you also haven't taken into account the users. That's something that we're going to be exploring next month. Having the town put the system together goes over a whole bunch of problems with things like having roads dug up. It's much easier for a town to have that done than a private person. There are some reasons why private doesn't seem to be working here. I know, for instance, the mill, the soil doesn't work. I've asked my landlord why he doesn't put in a new septic. He can't.
I was in the mill, you know, that is a beautiful building. I've been in that building. I went to school. The only other building in the world like that one is where I went to school. It was built in 1860, okay? And it stood for hundreds of years. It was made exactly, and I went in there and saw it. I loved it. I said, this is beautiful. But you know what happened to my school? It's gone now. That 200-year-old building had to be torn down. It had asbestos in it. It was full of termites. They tore it down, and now there are trees growing there. So I don't know the length of the life of that building, but I'm just opening up another whole area relative to that building. I know its days are limited. I'm sorry to say, because I love it. It's a good building. But to build, maybe, well, let's not go there. I just think that it's an extremely old building, and it's got a really short future.
Ted, did you still want to say something?
No, I think Dina got it, and, Tom, I just want to say, we're acquaintances to church, us and Kathy, and you and Kathy and stuff, and so, I just never want to risk that relationship, but I do feel that this committee is being more cautious by taking this in steps, and that, I want to know the answer. The preliminary design report says, yeah, it's possible that it's likely, and we just feel that there's enough possibility to go forward and investigate with the next step. So I think it's possible, but I want to know before I go ahead and throw out all the work that's been done and throw out the possibility of some growth in town, stabilizing tax rates, and hopefully getting the burden away from residents. So that's probably where we disagree. Is that I feel willing.
I can't afford a property tax increase.
Yeah. Stop spending.
Mr. Levine?
Hi, Mark Levine, Hartwell Avenue. Two questions, comments actually. The first time this went up to town meeting, it was for $558,000. This time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you voted $600,000 last night to go forward.
I don't think we voted a number because we voted to
Yeah, I think
not
you did.
vote on. Did we actually vote a number?
Yeah.
And did we vote 600 last time? or
No.
558.
Last night. we voted
550.
600.
No, last night we
was
voted
600.
600, but
But
in
before that was
April-
558.
And we, is that right? Okay. I thought we gave ourselves wiggle room.
So I'm wondering if
Yeah.
in May it's going to be
Oh,
700,000.
well, that's based on the quote that we got for $558,000 from Mike Dominica, our
So
consultant.
why did you go up to 600,000?
Last night, we went up because, well, Warren, did you want to say something about that? We wanted to have some wiggle room, Warren's expertise. He felt that, go ahead, I'll let you talk and say what you're.
In my opinion, the $558,000 is a reasonable number. In my experience, I have yet to see any project come in exactly at the estimate before you have received formal proposals. That is our consultant's estimate of what they think this work will cost. We have not received formal proposals from the three qualified firms. They may come in 500. They may come in 700. We don't know. In my experience, I recommended to the committee that you should allow some contingency based on the estimates you've received. And we rounded it to $600,000.
Okay, also stated last night was you had, what, $19,000 left over?
Right.
So why don't you apply that to the
When it goes
$558,000
up
as
there.
the buffer and leave that number the same?
Oh, well, that was a suggestion I had during our discussion, which you were there to witness. We have two new members on our committee that were present last night, so our discussion was different than it was in April. And we did have a discussion, and when we came to a vote, we voted on $600,000 with Warren's recommendation of having that contingency. And I suggested, as you know, that we put forth the remainder of what we have left in our budget, approximately $19,000, towards that. It was decided to ask for the $600,000, and we'll see what happens with the property owners. If we can get all the property owners to agree to pay that $600,000 or whatever it is, then that $20,000 will go back to the teachers' retirement fund or whatever the general wherever it can go. I don't know, Bonnie can tell us where that money could go, but.
Okay, and my last question, hopefully. Dina talked about transfer development rights.
Yep.
Could you explain those to me? I don't understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Transfer development rights is where the town facilitates denser development in one place and less development in another. And the problem is, in order to facilitate that, you need some money. So I'm going to use an example, and this is off the top of my head, so please don't, take my numbers too seriously. The Fletcher property, where he wants to build a large sports complex, that's not where we want to see a large sports complex. We want to see a large sports complex, for instance, this is just an example, on the other side of 495, where the Curtis Strauss building is. It's as far as I know, it's empty right now. But the septic system there will not take several hundred people doing their sports thing there. That's what we need the sewer for. If we have the sewer in place, we can put a denser development on that Curtis Strauss property because that waste will be taken care of. That Curtis Strauss building is kind of near the water supply. So what the town would do is it would buy the development rights from Mr. Fletcher and transfer them to the other property. Basically enabling him to buy the other property and move his building there and transferring the density from one onto the other. So he could take what he could build on his original property and add that to what the property could have had ordinarily. So if he could have a density of 100 people per acre, and he had 100 people per acre where he was, it now makes it 200 there, and his original farmland that we want to keep farmland, that's our gateway, we want to see undeveloped space, would stay farmland. He sold his development rights, he no longer has the right to put anything there. And those development rights would make the new property twice as dense. He'd be able to build something bigger, but it would still have to be within the zoning, approved by the planning board, approved by the Board of Health. It would still be within all the town laws, but it would facilitate him putting something that would give him economic use of his property. We're just kind of moving it. Did that make sense?
What would happen to that property?
Which
His
one?
property?
The
Would it
Fletcher?
just remain open space?
That would remain undeveloped land. He could farm it, he could rent it out for farming, he could, put walking paths on it. He could not build on it. The building rights have been sold and transferred. What we're doing is we're treating the building rights kind of, mining rights. There's something that can be separated from the property and dealt with differently. But to fund that transfer of development rights needs some money up front. We can't just tell people, oh yeah, we'll just move it when, you go buy that land. And there has to be some money to make this work. And that's the transfer of development rights. Hopefully, did that make sense?
Except for the money part.
Well,
Is it a mitigation payment or what?
Bob knows about it. It's a very complex
Okay.
scenario. But basically, Bob.
So, forgive me, I'll try to explain this quickly. Transfer of development rights. So currently on the Fletcher property, we'll use that as an example, although this is all hypothetical.
Completely.
We're inventing this as we speak. The town builds the sewer. Property taxes within 5 years increase for the town by something like $4 to $5 million annually. The town elects to take $1 million of that increased property tax revenue and use it to bond over 20 years, $20 million bucks, of which, I don't know, $1.8 million is interest at 2.5%, and the remainder is $18.2 million that the town could use to buy development rights. So they offer the town offers the Fletchers an amount of money. I have no idea what the value would be, but that would be determined. The Fletchers would continue to own the property, but their right to develop 80 homes on that property would transfer to the town with the check that the town hands them from the borrowed money. Then the town would turn around, and with that money, the Fletchers buy their, whatever this other property
Say the
was.
Curtis Strauss.
All right. And they need greater density there, so the town would sell them the right for greater density with the rights that the town just bought and is holding, kind of in a bank. And then they can go ahead and grow there. Another example, one of the farms in town. The best crop to grow, depending on the state of the real estate market in a town like Littleton, has, 3, 4, or 5 bedrooms in it. That's the best way to make the most money on private property, open space, which is on a road in town. If the town would like to preserve the open space, the town approaches the farmer, negotiates the deal, hands them a check for the value of not the agricultural or forested open space, but the value of building homes on that agricultural or forested open space. The town then takes and banks or stores the rights and sells those rights in the common area, the area where it wants to see density, as density bonuses. Or it can simply hold the rights in perpetuity. But the whole idea of transfer of development rights, which has been pursued across the nation, generally doesn't work because there isn't a banker. There isn't someone that can put the money up front, acquire the development rights, and then hold them for a period of time for resale at some later date in an area where the town wants to see greater density. In this way, the town gets tremendous control over growth, actually protects the character of the town. I think the thing that most of us appreciate about Littleton, which is the forested and agricultural open space, and also stores valuable assets for sale at some later date for greater density in the area where the town wants to see it.
Don McIver, 43 Foster Street. Transfer development rights have been actually presented in the town a number of times. In fact, I put on a presentation with Joel Russell about 15 years ago, and later with Susan Moses, who is a planner on the North Shore. There are examples nearby. Barnstable, for example, has sort of mapped out the whole town as to where added development could be and where reduced development could be. And the reduced development, you talk about sending those density rights to the more developed area. Groton's also an example, and they've done it much more simply. And what they do is look at the open space and recreation report and decide from there where the high priorities and where you should be preserving land have less density. And it has been used to a fair amount. Some places will land bank, put money for banking. That's typical Cape Cod. So there are ways of doing it. The main concern usually that arises is that people want to build a more densely some area, usually in a downtown area, but then there's a debate as to who should get the benefit of the reduced development. But it certainly can be used for farm areas, but I don't see sewering necessarily connected to that. And we've just talked about that more recently when we put together a bylaw. I know you felt there wasn't time to put together transfer development rights, but it's been talked about for a long time.
You don't see the sewer connection being the fact that they wouldn't be able to transfer development in the common area because the common couldn't handle certain things like a sports center without a sewer system.
Well, you also have issues of parking and other things. The slew of concerns.
Yeah. Megan, I just want to talk about parking as long as it came up just for a moment. That question comes up once in a while about parking, and it is something that will have to be addressed. But we don't know what we're going to build. We don't know if we're going to build. And we don't know if we do build, we don't know what that build-out's going to be, so we don't know what the parking requirements would be. There are places for parking. There have been rumors or murmurs or whatever you want to say about where a parking deck might go or where extra parking might go. There are options out there, but we can't put parking ahead of the development, and the development is contingent on sewer. So that's what I just want to say about parking, why it hasn't been looked at yet.
Hi, I'm Beverly Sear from Hartwell Avenue. Dina, I'm glad you brought up Hingham. That's my hometown.
Okay.
5 generations of my family have lived there and grown up there. I suggest, it is my feeling, that is very little comparison between Littleton and Hingham. My other question was, are you suggesting that the vacancies you keep referring to in the downtown, are you suggesting that they are vacant because they don't have the septic capacity? Or are they simply empty because of the economic climate?
Well, think of it this way. The retail businesses that are closing down, like Confetti and Lace and the downsizing of Little Town Toys. And I just want to disclose that Confetti and Lace is still doing alterations upstairs. I don't want her to completely lose business. But if people were coming to town for other things, like a coffee shop or a restaurant or a bistro, or to see their lawyer or to check in with their eye doctor or foot doctor, there's a greater chance they're going to stop in and peek in at the dresses at Confetti and Lace. They have a greater chance of staying alive when there's increased foot traffic. And that I know now as a business owner, because on Mondays, there's no foot traffic and nobody walks by my business. But on Thursdays, when the two businesses next to me are open, people pop in and say, oh, can I get a hearing test? Can my husband come in and get his hearing checked? And it's a big difference on Mondays versus Thursdays if the other businesses are open or closed. Now that I have vacancies on each side of me, I'm concerned about my business, yes. So I think that other businesses help each other. It's a community thing. So I think...
But I hear your concern about the vacancies on either side of you.
Yeah.
But you're not telling me whether they're vacant because their septic isn't supporting the business, or if it's simply economic climate, which is 2 completely different things.
I can address with specific examples after Dina. Go ahead.
Okay. Megan was saying earlier that she signed her lease without checking first whether her business would be allowed. Any business that was trying to move into her building that had a water use that was too great, if they investigated first, they'd never sign a lease because they wouldn't be allowed a business license in the town of Littleton. So what we're doing by not having the septic capability is cutting down the number of potential renters for these buildings. We're restricting who can go in there.
Is that
So-
true of all the properties, including the Scott Brown?
I have not checked on all the properties. I know about Megan's, I know about the building I'm in. I have not checked with all the other property owners.
I actually
But I know
did-
that, but I know it's a big
Yeah.
concern for the person, for the mill.
Two weeks ago, I spoke to a neighbor who had a business plan in hand and went to the Scott Brown office, talked to the landlord about his business plan, which was like a coffee shop, ice cream shop, and he was told no. So the reason was cited as sewer, no sewer. But go ahead.
The other thing is, for instance, tomorrow, I have a couple driving up from Connecticut for a fitting. I'm going to fit them, and then I'm going to send them for someplace to eat, because I don't want them, sitting there going, while I'm trying to finish their alterations. I don't have a whole lot of choices for where to send them. The Littleton sub shop gets an awful lot of business because I send my customers there while I'm finishing their alterations, finishing their hem, whatever. Businesses help each other. I walk around the corner to Electronics Plus when I need a battery for something. If there isn't some draw, if there aren't other businesses, if there aren't people working together, that's when things start to fall off.
I believe if Common Convenience was a restaurant, there's a good chance Confetti and Lace may not be going out of business. So yes, there's an economic layer to this. There's an economic layer, but I believe that there's an extra layer of constriction in Littleton on top of that economic condition of the country. But Littleton has another restriction on top of that.
Thank you. My last question is, where are the owners? They're not here this evening. They're not here advocating for themselves. I believe in your report, which was published and brought out in January of 2012,
Yes.
there was a section which indicated that you had contacted them.
The town had contacted them. Our
The
committee
ta-
did not. The town sent postcards
Could you tell
out.
us the results that are in your report?
Yes, I believe, if I can remember off the top of my head, that there were a certain percentage of the 98 properties that responded. If anyone remembers the numbers, I want to say it was 60%. And of that, there were 2 properties that said, no, they were not interested, and the large majority were interested. We are scheduled on October 5th to have a property owner forum. We've invited the property owners. The town sent out postcards. I have a copy in my bag that says sewer ? Yes, this could impact you. It went to every property owner in the study area. They were invited to come on October 5th to a brunch. We're going to buy coffee out of pocket.
Yes, we're,
Yeah. So that will be the beginning of a conversation that now, the silver lining behind the postponement of the article is that I agree with you. We need to hear from them. This is for them, so we need to hear from them, and I agree with you 100%. Where are they? We need to hear from them.
I don't have the report in front of me, and I have read it, and my recollection is that the percentages are much more negative. But I can't speak to it tonight because I don't have it in front of me.
Bob probably knows the numbers better than I can remember. Does anyone here remember? But Bob, do you have the?
Yeah,
I don't want to cut you off if you.
Our subcontractor, Natural Systems Utilities, contacted 100% of the property owners. 88 responded.
Okay.
Of the 88 responses, 2 were no, and pretty much evenly split in the other 2 categories, which was yes, but I need more information, or simply yes, we're in favor of sewer.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that does it for my questions.
Okay, thank you.
Megan, can I address the first question?
Sure.
Or whatever, I don't know, first, second, or third, whatever. It's my theory that a lot of these vacancies are due to septic. I was on the Board of Health, and there are a few examples. Ken's, whatever, Trey Amici, when, I can't remember the name, the owner of the name for Trey Amici, but when he bought that, he was limited. I remember having a conversation, he was limited by the number of seats in there. He had a business plan in there, and when he found out he couldn't put enough seats in there to match his business plan, prices had to go up. So did that eventually lead to his demise? I don't know, but there's a situation where a business plan didn't match the property.
But he was also limited by his parking.
Right, but, yeah, but also, they are limited. They are limited by the number of seats they can put into the septic, yeah. But, I mean, can parking be resolved if you get over the septic? I don't know. But, yeah, it was 98 or 99 seats, yeah. Well, I mean, parking, but there's no, parking, I believe with the lot across the street, there's something could have been resolved there.
He already had an agreement with an adjacent parcel. So this parking is.
But, so was he limited by parking?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he couldn't have gotten something across the street? He could have made a deal with IBM and said, I want to use your parking spaces
He
at night.
could have if they had additional parking.
Right.
But he already had
Yeah.
an
But-
agreement.
all right.
Which is vacant.
What's that?
There's telehousing with a vacant parking lot
Yeah.
across the street,
Right.
could use that.
All right. So my contention, what I know about the soils and the lot size, and what I've seen on Board of Health, is that properties are limited by septic. No, I'm not saying that's the case on everything, but I think to some degree it does play a part.
Okay, I think, maybe we'll make yours the last question of the evening. It's getting late, unless there are a lot of burning questions from other members, but, yes.
My question is, we have the Point coming in with a lot of mixed-use facilities. Be restaurants there, there'll be walking areas there, there'll be coffee shops there, be a lot of things there. What use would be in the common that would absolutely attract something or more traffic than the Point would attract? I don't see anybody crossing over 495 to come to the Common while they're at the Point. So I guess my statement is, and I'm glad that we're waiting till May, but we should wait a little longer to see what the impact of the Point is before we even take this any further. Because I think you're going to find that a lot of people are going to be happy with the Point, are going to go over to the Point, and what is the sense of coming to the Common when there's, one, no place to park,
And two, nothing really there that is any better than what's at the point.
I believe we heard earlier from a resident of the center of town saying that she wanted places she could walk to. I'm a business in the center of town. I get out, I walk to the bank, I walk to the post office, I walk to someplace to eat. I'm not going to cross over 495, I'm not even going to cross over 119 if I can help it, to
Right,
get
but-
to the point.
but
So I'm
what-
saying that they're serving two different communities.
But what kind of viability will the common businesses have if it's only people that are walking from local, from the local limited area?
Same kind of
I don't-
viability at Concord.
Megan,
Concord
can I,
businesses have.
because I asked Sam Park that
But they park there.
They park somewhere, walk all the way up and down that street, walk down the other side street, get in their car and go home after.
It's a good question. I asked Sam Park the question right when this thing started. What's going to happen to our common when you put all those uses in there? He says his uses his property attracts a certain amount of uses. So you're going to get your, it's going to be similar to the place up at Westford. You're going to get your burger joint, you're going to get your boutique, yogurt place, things like that. He said, but the places that get built up in the common, and there's a draw from that, is that you're going to have your florist, you're going to have your dry cleaners, you're going to have, another coffee shop, something like that. But it's not going to be the same business. And his statement was that they feed off of one another. You're going to have something that people can walk to from IBM. Maybe someone puts in a boutique burger joint on the common so that no one has to walk all the way over there. Or there's going to be, a dry cleaner who goes in and, so people from IBM can service that. But from what I understood, it is maybe it's not the same term, but it's a symbiotic relationship where you both areas feed off each other and they both support each other. I'm not a business major, but I asked that question, and that's what I understood the answer to be, and I just wanted to pass it along.
And the kind of customers I attract are the kind of customers who are going to avoid any kind of chain, just as a matter of course. If they're driving 200 miles to get custom-made clothing, they're going to go out of their way to avoid Burger King.
There's not going to be a Burger King across the street.
What was that?
There's not going to be a Burger King in Littleton, I'm sure of that.
Right, but my point is that,
At least we agree on something.
my point is that customers would like to find something a little more eclectic than the sub shop.
Okay, I'd like to wrap up by 9:30. We have 5 minutes left. Mr. Coughlin?
Tom Coughlin, Coughlin Road. I'd just like to make a suggestion. Have you folks talked to the FinCom about this? I know the Pioneer Institute puts out a graph of the debt that towns have, and we're way above the average. So I think it would be beneficial for you folks to talk to the FinCom about
We're
that.
scheduled on the 24th, next Tuesday.
Oh, you are? Okay, thank you.
Yes. Anything else? Thank you so much, everyone, for your
Yeah, I'd like to
interest
say
and
thank you
time.
for everyone who showed up. I mean, with the
Oh, one
article,
more. Sorry.
with the article not appearing, just saying, you can have the last word. Just with the article not appearing on the warrant, I
Yeah.
appreciate the people still showing up, and hopefully we can still get, people back and more people, in May coming in to talk about this. So appreciate the comments.
Vera Cohen, Newtown Road. One of the things that wasn't mentioned here and just began to get mentioned are the priorities for the town. It seems to me with a high debt, with high taxes, we really need something other than sewer to come first. We need the fire station, we need schools, we need a number of things that I think for citizens right now are more important than this.
It's a good point that there are competing priorities. The thing is, yes, we need a fire station. Yes, we have school. We may have some school issues, although we just rehab 2 of them and build 2 more. The difference and the value in the sewer is the value that it can provide. You're not going to get any income out of the fire station. Putting in a new fire station is not going to allow new residents, new businesses to come to town. New schools, any other of those priorities that you mentioned are going to actually probably benefit from the sewer if there is a tax increase, a tax base increase, and if there are additional revenues. So as far as looking at it, it's something, whether or not we want to look at it further, something for the town to decide at the May town meeting. And there are competing priorities, and those things will have to be evaluated. But I think this is different because this could generate revenue. And I say could because I'm not going to tell anybody it will. I'm not going to make any guarantees. I'm not going to tell you to go vote for it. I'm going to give you what I understand and my information, and this committee is committed to putting out information, answering questions, and making this option available to the town.
Okay, I'd like to also thank the committee members. You did a great job. Thank you so much.
Hey, you're all.
I'm running on 5 hours sleep in 2 days.
Oh my gosh.